just going to talk you through a workflow we can use in ContentAgent to automate and centralize this process. So ContentAgent has a number of sort of file management features, and this also means that we can treat workflows as an asset to bring up at any time and have pre-configured ready for whenever we need them. So I'm going to talk you through our workflow first of all that we're going to be running our files through today. So this here is our workflow designer. So what we can do here is piece together multiple nodes, and each node performs a different sort of simple task, sometimes complex tasks as well, and we can piece them together in an intuitive way to very quickly build up multi-delivery format workflows, multi-ingest, all sorts, delivery to different areas, many at the same time. So what you can see down the left hand side here is all individual jobs that I can piece together, be that sort of a container function, some sort of transcode, QC, DVD authoring, uploads, downloads, all sorts. So here what I've got is a workflow that's going to entirely automate our DPP AS11 delivery. So we'll start here with this node that I've pieced as the first part of my workflow. So this here is our DPP creation node, and this is really a one-stop DPP shop. So this will encode your sources with the correct flavor of video essence and audio essence, and put in the right time code, inject all the metadata, and we really just give you control over what you can control in the spec. So whether it's SD or HD, 4:16 channels, sort of the time code. If you've already got the essences, well that's great, and we can just wrap them instead of encoding and making a new file. So this is all we need to make our DPP AS11 file, but then we've got a number of other checks we need to do on it required by the DPP quality control, for example. So this here is our VidChecker node. So this allows us to send a file out to VidChecker, which is a file-based quality control product, and ContentAgent is going to keep ownership of that file the whole time, so it's managing VidChecker as part of this workflow. So we can run our registered DPP checks, we can pull out all of the metadata that it gives us, feed that back into us, and use it to automate workflows further down the line. So I'll show you what VidChecker is doing for us in a moment when I kick off my transcode. But kick off the entire workflow, I should say, not just the transcode. But then I'll just talk you about what we're doing further down the line. So we're doing two things. VidChecker is going to give us a PDF report or an XML report about the QC process, how it's gone, what's passed, what's failed, and we can take ownership of that. Here I'm storing them in our virtual file system, as it were, but there's nothing to stop you copying out to a network location. Perhaps you would like to use an email and send that off to a certain member of staff or broadcaster. So we can do a great number of things with that. We're taking back all the metadata, as I say, as well from that check. So all the information we can take back about if it's past PSE, loudness, and we can incorporate that as part of our workflow intelligence later down the line. So we pass our file off here to a decision node. So this is essentially a metadata analysis of certain fields, so whether it's true, false, a comparative statement, maybe less than, more than. This one's a very simple one. We're just saying overall, has it passed or has it failed our VidCheck verification process. If it's passed the QC process, great, we'll do one thing. If it's failed, we'll do another. So we can, once our file has passed QC, we're going to go and store it again in our virtual file system, but that could also be copied out to a network path, which I'm doing here. So this is any UNC path. We could upload it via FTP, Aspira, Signin, folders we can copy to also. But if it's failed, then we're going to want a different course of action. So in this situation, we're copying it to a quarantine. Again, we can notify ourselves via email, whatever, that it's failed. And if there's some other match, a warning or whatever, then we're going to copy that to quarantine again. So very quickly, and this only took me a couple of minutes to do, I built that up a workflow. You know, I can pull in any node, and I've already got templates living for it. I can make my own very quickly and start to build up workflows again about what I want to do. I can copy elements and drag them around. And very quickly, I build up other workflows with multiple delivery formats or whatever alongside. So this will make me 3 files at once or whatever. So intuitively, it's very easy to see what we're creating. So my DPP workflow lives there, it's ready to go, and now I need to think about the metadata that I want in my file and the segmentation of how that file works. Here is my file, it lives here, and what I can do is I can pull up all of the metadata within ContentAgent and have a look at it, and then at this point I'm going to want to say what the metadata of the file is in terms of DPP requirements. So I'm going to add my DPP metadata schema. If you've used the DPP app, it's much the same as this, and this will give us all the fields that we need. So here's some I've pulled out earlier, and I can fill these in. These are just sort of text fields. All the metadata that's required by the specification I can fill in here, ready to inject into my file when I create it. So, you know, picture ratio, and crucially as well, the track layout that's required. I can describe this here, and that will get injected into my file. So I've marked up the metadata of my file, then it's just left for me to do the segmentation. So ContentAgent has this sequencer. So this can play out on a computer monitor, but it can also play out of our SDI out, and we can do all sorts of quality control checks with that. But here what I'm doing is I'm marking up the segmentation of my file. So I can use these chapter points, and I've marked in one here at 30, and this is the start of my program. So this would traditionally have line up on here. On this piece of media it doesn't, but I've now got a chapter point, so if I go back and look at it and edit my chapters, I now can look at those as DPP segments, and I can see I'm marked up, I'm good to go. Great. So now let's kick this off. I'm ready, I'm pretty confident I can make my DPP file. I can very quickly navigate to my workflow in my file management system, pull that up, and with one click it's ready to go. If that's pre-configured, it's the same every time, and you can just submit your file to that. So here we are, we're making the file, and we'll be able to see the progress of that. So at this point I'll just show you what we're doing with VidChecker checks. So VidChecker's got a whole range of tests and checks it can perform, and we sort of split these down into 3 areas. So there's file checks, video checks, and audio checks. So file details are really checking things that your operators are not going to be able to see. Is the container right? Is the GOP structure correct? Just the technical integrity of the file. Is it what's required by the specification? And crucially here, we're checking the start time codes. We're then going to go and check our video checks also. So these are checking the frame of each video for chroma levels, that they're in the correct color gamut, and other checks. So here we're checking our YUV levels, but also we're doing an intelligent transpose to the right color space, and checking the RGB gamut. So that's within legal range also when it goes out to broadcast. And then we're also doing this flashing check. So this is the PSE check that's required by the DPP specification. It's not a Harding check. This is VidChecker's own algorithm, and this is approved by Ofcom, which is in turn approved by the DPP. So it's perfectly acceptable for broadcast, and this is all automated as part of the workflow. So we're then doing a number of audio checks at the same time too. So here we can check again in much the same way that the codec's correct, you know, the sample rate, whatever, is what we're expecting. But then crucially, we are checking our loudness, and that we're checking that it conforms to EBUR 128 standard, and the true peak is where it needs to be. Now at this point I'd just like to mention that we can have a file rejected because it doesn't meet the specifications that we require in terms of video levels and audio checks for loudness, but we can also have VidChecker intelligently correct them. So I can have my VidChecker check automatically correct and legalize those frames, and then ContentAgent can again still keep track of that and work with the with the corrected file and pass that off in the workflow in the same way. So I'm not doing that in this instance, but it has some very intelligent correcting algorithms, and in exactly the same way I can correct as signified by these boxes for EBU, R128 and other loudness checks. So now I'm just going to go and look at the workflow we've done, so we can just look at the path that our file took very quickly, and you'll get an idea of the automation and intelligence. So we can see that our file has actually had no match because it's had some warnings, I believe. It's gone through the workflow, it's had no match. So let's go and look at what that is and what the VidChecker report gives us. So VidChecker is going to tell us, firstly, all about our input file, that it's what we expect. It's going to spit out some sort of media information about the essences of our file. At the same time, it's going to give us all our DPP, MXF metadata. And then it's also going to give us any file alerts it's found with a timecode stamp if necessary. So my file here nearly made it. It's past PSE, past flashing, past harmful patterns. One of my my channels 3 and 4 have passed my audio checks, but 1 and 2 have failed. So that's given me a warning. They're not within the required loudness range. And so that has been deposited within my quarantine, and I can go and review that, I can send that off, but I could have had that automatically corrected, and VidChecker and ContentAgent would have carried on the workflow. We could have perhaps built in an email notification to tell you that it had failed the workflow, but still corrected it, and that would have been very easy to do. So the point is that ContentAgent can very quickly and very easily build up a complex multi-stage delivery workflow, and it can centralize all that process, taking out potential for human error and saving operators time doing sort of mundane tasks, copying files and kicking off jobs, and they can be deployed in other areas.